Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to ancient Greece. But we're not going to Athens to hang out with philosophers in breezy to gas. No, we're headed to the ancient world's most notorious military state, a place of iron discipline and legendary toughness, Sparta. And you're not just visiting. You're going to be born there. Frankly, given the welcome they give to newborns, you might not even survive the first day. This isn't the glorious, slow-motion, six-pack ABS story of the movie 300. This is the quiet, grinding, and often cruel reality behind the legend, the life of a boy being forged into a weapon. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where these stories are traveling. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you register is not warmth or a gentle caress. It's a shock of cold air on your wet skin, a jarring contrast to the silent, fluid world you've known for the last 9 months. The sounds are muffled and strange low, guttural voices speaking a clipped, unfamiliar tongue. You try to cry, a thin, reedy wail, but it feels swallowed by the starkness of the room. There's no cooing, no soft blankets being swaddled around you. Instead, you feel small, clumsy hands lifting you. You are plunged into a shallow basin, but the liquid isn't water. It's wine. The sharp, acidic fumes sting your nostrils, and the liquid itself is cold, making you gasp. This, you will later understand, is your very first test. It's a piece of local lore. A belief that a strong, healthy infant will be invigorated by the wine bath, their body firming up. A weaker child, one with a watery constitution or some hidden frailty, would supposedly falter, perhaps even fall into convulsions. It's a bizarre and unscientific piece of folk medicine, a strange welcome to a world that values strength above all else. You squirm and cry, but your limbs remain strong. You have, unknowingly, passed. But the true trial is yet to come. After being briskly dried with a coarse cloth, you are handed to your father. His hands are calloused and firm. There's no softness in his grip, only a sense of duty. He doesn't look at you with the wonder of a new parent, but with the critical eye of an inspector evaluating a tool. He wraps you in another rough piece of fabric and carries you out of the house. The air outside is even colder, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. You are on a short, solemn procession through the sparse, unadorned streets of your hometown. There are no grand buildings here, no marble temples gleaming in the sun. Spartan homes are simple, functional, almost severe. The glory of Sparta is not in its architecture, but in its people, or rather, in its soldiers. Your destination is a place called the Lesche, a sort of public meeting hall where the elders of your tribe convene. It's a plain, open-air structure at the foot of a truly immense shadow, the hulking, jagged peaks of Mount Agoge. The mountain looms over everything, a constant, silent observer of Spartan life. It is both a fortress and a tomb. You are brought before a group of old men. They are the Gerousia, the Council of Elders. Their faces are like maps of old battles, etched with wrinkles and scars. Their eyes, however, are sharp and discerning. They've seen hundreds, perhaps thousands, of infants just like you. Your father presents you to them with a quiet deference. One of the elders takes you. His touch is surprisingly gentle but completely impersonal. It is the touch of a farmer checking livestock. He turns you over, running a finger down your tiny, still forming spine. He extends your arms and legs, checking for symmetry and proper form. He opens your mouth, peers into your eyes. He is looking for any sign of imperfection, any physical defect, any hint of weakness that might render you unfit to become a Spartan warrior. This is the state's official quality control. In Sparta, you are not born a citizen by right, you are born a candidate. Your very existence is subject to approval. The state, not your family, has the first and final say. Has the elder examined you? A quiet but heavy tension fills the air. If you are deemed perfect or perfect enough, you will be returned to your parents to be raised for the first 7 years of your life, a child on loan from the state. But if any flaw is found, a crooked limb, a sign of sickness, anything that suggests you might not grow into a flawless soldier who can hold a heavy shield and march for days, your fate is sealed. You would be taken by a state official up the winding paths of Mount to get us to a place known as the Apiodate, the place of rejection. It is a deep chasm, the dark fissure in the rock. There, you would be left, abandoned to the elements. Now, it's worth noting that this stark image, famously recorded by the ancient biographer Plutarch, is a subject of intense academic debate today. For centuries, the world accepted this as the unvarnished, brutal truth of Spartan society. However, modern archaeologists who have examined the supposed site have found a distinct lack of infant remains. They found skeletons of adult men, likely criminals or enemies of the state, but not the mass grave of babies you would expect. Historians now argue whether Plutarch was reporting a fact, exaggerating a rare practice, or even repeating anti-Spartan propaganda designed to make them seem monstrous. Was systematic infanticide a core state policy, or a grim myth that Spartans themselves might have encouraged to enhance their fearsome reputation? The jury is still out. But for you, in this moment, the myth feels terrifyingly real. The elder finishes his inspection. He holds you up for a moment, his gaze unreadable. Then, he gives a short, curt nod. You are acceptable. You are deemed worthy. There is no smile, no word of congratulations. The transaction is complete. You are handed back to your father, who carries you home. You are back in your mother's arms. But something has fundamentally changed. You are no longer just her child. You are a future asset of Sparta, a tiny cog in its relentless military machine. Your first day on Earth is over. You survived, but you also just enlisted in an army you don't yet know exists, and your training has, in its own cold way, already begun. Your world for the next 7 years is small and contained, defined by the 4 walls of your home and the stern, watchful presence of your mother. But if you were expecting a reprieve, a gentle childhood filled with warmth and play, you are sorely mistaken. The state has returned you to your family, but only as a temporary foster arrangement. Your mother is not just your nurturer, she is your first drill instructor. Her primary duty is to prepare you for the life that awaits, to ensure you do not grow soft before the state reclaims you. There is a noticeable absence of coddling. When you fall and scrape your knee, you are not swept up into a comforting embrace. Instead, your mother's voice cuts through your tears, sharp and steady, telling you to stand up. Pain is a lesson, not an injury to be mourned. Crying is a weakness you are taught to suppress. When you are frightened by the dark or a sudden noise, she does not light a lamp or soothe you with lullabies. She might even leave you in the dark, forcing you to master your fear alone. The Spartan belief is that a child accustomed to comfort will become a man who flinches in battle. So, comfort is methodically withheld. Your toys are simple and functional small wooden spears, toy shields. Your games are rehearsals for combat. You wrestle with your brothers, if you have them, or with the sons of neighbors. These are not playful tumbles, they are serious contests of strength and will, overseen by the mothers who offer critiques, not condolences. You learn to throw a small javelin, to run without tiring, to obey a command without hesitation. This method of child rearing was so famous in the ancient world that it became a sort of bizarre, high-end export. While Athenians and Corinthians might have looked at Spartan society with a mixture of fear and disdain, they paradoxically admired the results. Wealthy families from other Greek city-states would actively seek out and hire Spartan women to be wet nurses and nannies for their own children. They believed a Spartan nurse could instill discipline, courage, and a kind of rugged self-sufficiency in their sons that their own. More indulgent mothers could not. It's a strange thought, paying a premium to have someone from a rival state raise your child to be emotionally resilient, essentially outsourcing the very character building your own culture deems too harsh. As you grow, you see your mother not just as a figure of authority in the home, but as a formidable power within Spartan society. Spartan women enjoyed a level of freedom and influence that was shocking to other Greeks. They could own and inherit property. They were educated, and they were famously outspoken. You see her managing the family estate, giving orders to the helot serfs who worked the land, and engaging in public discourse with men. She is strong, competent, and deeply invested in the state's success. But this raises a question that historians still grapple with today. What was the true emotional landscape of these women? The ancient sources, all written by men, paint them as almost inhumanly stoic. Women who would express pride upon hearing of a son's glorious death in battle and shame if he returned alive from a defeat. They are the ultimate patriotic mothers, sacrificing their children for the state without a tear. But was this the whole truth? Was it a public performance? A role they had to play to maintain their status and honor within a society that demanded it? Or did they genuinely, so completely, buy into the Spartan ideology that their maternal instincts were entirely rewired for civic duty? We have no letters, no diaries from Spartan mothers. We only have the legends and the accounts of outsiders. The possibility of a hidden, private grief, of a mother weeping in the silence of her home after sending her 7-year-old away forever, is a poignant mystery that history will likely never solve. The days and years tick by in the steady rhythm of discipline and training. You are growing stronger, faster. Your fear of the dark has faded, replaced by a quiet watchfulness. The sting of a scraped knee barely registers. You have learned your lessons well, but a shadow is beginning to stretch over your life. Your 7th birthday is approaching. It is not a day for celebration. It is a day of reckoning. It is the day the state comes to collect its property. You can see it in your mother's eyes, not sadness, but an intensified sense of purpose. Her work is almost done. She has molded you, toughened you, prepared you. Soon, you will be taken from her. You will leave this house and not return as a child. Ever again. You will enter a new world, a brutal brotherhood from which there is no escape. And as you lie on your simple straw mat at night, you can almost hear the footsteps of the official who will come to take you away. The morning of your 7th birthday arrives, not with celebration, but with a stark, quiet finality. The air in the house feels different, heavier. Your mother inspects you one last time, her gaze lingering for just a moment longer than usual. She adjusts the simple tunic you wear, her movements efficient and unsentimental. There are no tears. There is no long embrace. Her farewell is the same as her education, concise, practical, and unyielding. She has done her duty. Now you must do yours. A man arrives at your door. He is not a relative, not a family friend. He is an official of the state, a paidonomos, the boy herder. He is an older man, a veteran whose own body is a testament to the life you are about to enter. He carries a stout wooden rod, a symbol of his authority. He says little, merely giving your father a nod before turning his attention to you. His eyes are not cruel, but they are devoid of any warmth. They are the eyes of a man who sees you not as a child, but as raw material. He beckons you with a flick of his head. You hesitate for a fraction of a second. A primal urge to cling to the only home you have ever known. But your mother's training kicks in. Obedience. No hesitation. You take a step forward, then another, leaving your family behind without a backward glance. To look back would be a sign of weakness. You walk out into the daylight, and the door to your childhood home closes behind you. The sound is dull, definitive. You are not alone. As you walk through the dusty streets, you see other boys, all your age, being led from their homes in the same solemn manner. Some look defiant, some look bewildered, but most, like you, Wear a mask of stoic resolve that has been carefully crafted over 7 years. You are herded together into a small, silent group, a collection of individuals about to be dissolved into a collective. You are led to a sprawling, austere compound on the edge of town. This is the Agoge. It is not a school, in any sense you might understand. There are no classrooms, no libraries. It is a barracks, a training ground, a crucible designed to burn away your individuality. The buildings are rough and functional, built for durability, not comfort. The ground is hard-packed earth, already scuffed and stained by generations of boys who came before you. The paid Onomos and his assistants, older boys and veteran warriors, take charge. The process begins immediately. You and the other new arrivals are stripped of the tunics you wore from home. These last vestiges of your old life are tossed aside. You are now possessions of the state, and the state will clothe you. Or rather, they won't. You are issued your new uniform, which you will wear for the rest of your youth, a single, coarse, red cloak known as a phalanx. This cloak will be your only garment. You will wear it in the searing heat of summer and the biting cold of winter. You will sleep in it at night. You are also instructed to go barefoot. Shoes are a luxury, a comfort that makes the feet soft. The Spartan warrior must have feet hardened like leather, capable of marching over any terrain without complaint. The cold shock of the rough ground on your bare soles is your first official lesson in endurance. You are then organized into a pack, then age law or herd. This group of perhaps a dozen boys will be your new family. You will eat, sleep, train, and fight alongside them for the next decade. Your loyalty is no longer to your mother and father, but to the boys of your age law and to the older youth leader, the Iren, who is put in charge of you. This Iren is a young man of 20, a graduate of the Agoge himself, now tasked with enforcing its brutal discipline upon the next generation. The psychological shift is immediate and profound. You are no longer you, an individual with a name and a family. You are a member of the herd. The success or failure of any one of you reflects on all of you. If one boy cries out during a beating, the whole group may be punished for his weakness. If one boy succeeds in a difficult task, the group shares in the fleeting, unspoken approval. This is how Sparta builds its phalanx, the legendary military formation that relies on absolute cohesion. The phalanx is not a collection of individual heroes. It is a single, unified wall of shields and spears. The Agoge is designed to create men who think and act as one, who instinctively protect the man next to them, because his survival is integral to their own. It's a strange and fascinating detail that the term age law, used for your group of boys, is the same word the Greeks used for a herd of cattle or a flock of sheep. The language itself reinforces the idea that you are being raised like livestock, managed and cultivated for a specific purpose. It's a dehumanizing concept, but one that is absolutely central to the Spartan system. Now, historians who study the Agoge often debate its true origins. When did this incredibly harsh, state-controlled upbringing actually begin? The Spartans themselves attributed it to their mythical lawgiver, Lycurgus. Centuries earlier, they saw it as an ancient, unbroken tradition that was the source of all their strength. But was it really that old? Some scholars argue that the Agoge, in its most extreme form, may have been a much later development, perhaps a radical response to a catastrophic event, like a massive Helot slave revolt or a humiliating military defeat. The state might have dramatically intensified the training system in the 6th or 5th century BCE to reassert its dominance and create a more ruthlessly effective army. The idea that this brutal system wasn't an age-old tradition but a desperate, reactionary invention changes how we view it, not as an expression of timeless Spartan character, but as a calculated political tool forged in a time of crisis. But you, a 7-year-old boy standing barefoot and shivering slightly in your new reed cloak, know nothing of these historical debates. You only know that your world has been violently upended. The faces around you, are unfamiliar. The rules are new and absolute. Your name is rarely used. You are part of a pack, a number, a unit. The process of erasing the boy you weren't forging the soldier you will become has officially begun. The sun sets on your first day in the Agoge, and as you huddle for warmth with the other boys on a bed of reeds you were forced to gather yourself, you understand that home is no longer a place you can ever return to. The first few weeks in the Agoge are a blur of confusion, fear, and relentless conditioning. The most powerful tool used to strip you of your old identity is the systematic erosion of your name. At home, your name was yours. It signified you, your lineage, your place in a family. Here, it is used sparingly, almost as an afterthought. You were not addressed by your name, but as boy, recruit, or, most often, by your position within the group. You are simply one body in the age law. Your new name, the one that truly matters, is group. Everything is done as a unit. You wake together before dawn. Roused by the sharp bark of your iron, you run together. You train together. You eat your meager rations together. And you sleep together on the hard floor of the barracks. Individuality is not just discouraged, it is treated as a form of insubordination. If you are too slow, the group is punished. If you are too quick to show off, you are beaten back into line. The goal is uniformity, a seamless entity where no single part is more important than the whole. This psychological conditioning is the bedrock of the Spartan phalanx in the chaos of battle. The Greek hoplite's life depended on the man standing to his left, whose shield protected his unshielded right side. If that man broke formation, panicked, or acted for his own glory, the entire line could collapse. The Agoge ensures, from the age of 7, that you learn to think of the group's integrity before your own survival. Your instincts are being rewired. The self-preservation impulse is being replaced with a group preservation reflex. You are becoming a single cell in a larger organism. Your leader, the Iron, is the primary instrument of this change. He is a young man of 20, but to you, he seems ancient, the figure of absolute power. He is not a kind teacher. He is a tormentor, a taskmaster, and a judge. He is allowed, and even encouraged, to be harsh. It is his duty to test you, to push you past your limits, and to punish any sign of weakness. He carries his rod of authority at all times, and he uses it freely for any infraction, real or perceived. A moment's inattention, a sloppy movement in a drill, a word spoken out of turn, all can earn you a swift, stinging blow. This constant threat of casual violence creates an atmosphere of hypervigilance. You learn to read the Iron's moods, to anticipate his commands, to move with a quiet efficiency that draws no unwanted attention. You live in a state of low grade, perpetual fear, but it's a fear you must not show. To cry out, to flinch, to complain, these are the greatest sins. You learn to absorb the pain in silence, to lock it away. This, too, is training. A soldier who fears his officer more than the enemy will not break in the face of battle. A strange and little-known aspect of this system is the role of other adult citizens. Any Spartan man had the right to discipline any Spartan boy at any time. If you were seen misbehaving in public by any passing warrior, he could, and likely would, stop and punish you on the spot. Your own father, if he saw you, would be expected to do the same. In fact, if your father failed to punish you for an infraction another man witnessed, he himself could be seen as failing in his civic duty. This created a society of collective surveillance. There was no escape. Every adult male was a potential disciplinarian. Every public space a potential site of judgment. You were not just being raised by the Agoge, you were being raised by the entire city-state. The walls of the barracks were, or is the training, and the threat of punishment followed you everywhere. This absolute submission to the collective raises a fundamental question. One that even ancient philosophers like Aristotle debated: did the Spartan system produce true courage, or did it merely produce a kind of brutal obedience born of fear? Was a Spartan warrior brave because he had conquered fear internally? Or was he brave because the consequences of cowardice, the beatings, the lifelong disgrace, the shunning by his community were simply more terrifying to him than an enemy spear? Aristotle himself leaned toward the latter. He argued that the Spartans were not truly virtuous because their actions were compelled by punishment and the pursuit of honor, not by an intrinsic love of what is good. He saw their courage as a brutal thing, effective on the battlefield against known enemies, but ill-equipped for situations that required more than blind obedience. It's a critique that cuts to the very heart of the Spartan identity. Day by day, the boy you were continues to fade. The memories of your mother's face, the feeling of your own bed, the taste of a full meal, they are becoming distant, hazy things from another life. You no longer think in terms of I want or I feel. You think in terms of we must. You are learning to read the movements of the boys around you, to anticipate the needs of the group. You are a dozen bodies moving as one, a pack of young wolves being trained to hunt. Your individual identity has been sacrificed for a collective one. You now have a new name, an unspoken one that is understood by all. You are the herd, and your only purpose is to become strong for Sparta. The world outside the barracks becomes a sensory battleground. Then your own body is the front line, the single red cloak. Your phalanx is more a symbol of your status than a piece of functional clothing. In the blistering heat of a Laconia summer, it is suffocating. The coarse wool traps the heat, and the sweat drips down your back, mixing with the dust and grime of the training yard. There is no relief, no seeking shade unless permitted. You are taught to endure the heat, to function through the discomfort, to let your body bake and harden under the relentless sun. But it is the winter that truly tests your limits. The winds sweep down from the snow-capped peaks of Mount Tagetas, sharp and unforgiving. The ground, which you must always tread with bare feet, become descend painful. The cloak offers scant protection against the biting cold. At night, you and the other boys in your age law huddle together on your beds of reeds, a shivering mass of bodies seeking collective warmth. The cold seeps into your bones, a constant, gnawing ache. Sleep is shallow and frequently interrupted. This is not a matter of poverty or lack of resources. Sparta is an agricultural powerhouse, capable of producing ample wool and leather. This deprivation is a deliberate part of your curriculum. The reasoning, as explained by the ancient historian Xenophon, who was a great admirer of the Spartans, was multifaceted. First, it made you tough. A body accustomed to hardship would not falter during a long campaign when supplies were low and conditions were poor. You were being inoculated against the miseries of war. Second, it made you adaptable. A boy who was comfortable in a single garment in all weather would be less encumbered and more agile in a fight. And third, it was believed to promote physical growth. The theory, bizarre by modern standards, was that a body not constricted by layers of clothing or tight shoes would grow more freely unnaturally, producing taller, more athletic soldiers. Your feet are a particular focus of this hardening process. Going barefoot year-round is non-negotiable. In the beginning, the soles of your feet are tender. Every stone, every thorn, every patch of rough ground is an agony. You develop cuts, bruises, and blisters, but you are not allowed to limp or complain. You must walk, run, and drill on your injured feet until the pain becomes a familiar, background noise. Over time, the skin on your soles thickens, growing into a tough, leathery callus. You learn to move over rocky terrain with a speed and silence that would be impossible for someone shod in sandals. This, too, is a military skill. You are being turned into an all-terrain vehicle, an infantryman who needs no supply line for footwear. A lesser-known, and frankly disgusting, detail of your daily hygiene or lack thereof adds to the regimen of toughness. You are not allowed frequent, warm baths. Such things are considered decadent. an Athenian luxury that softens the body and spirit. Instead, your bathing is infrequent and always cold. You are taken to the icy Eurotas river and made to plunge into its frigid waters, a shock to the system designed to invigorate the skin and harden the constitution. You are also forbidden from using oils or lotions, common practice in the rest of Greece to clean the skin and protect it from the sun. The Spartan boy was expected to be grimy, his skin weathered and dry. You are being conditioned to live like an animal, to be comfortable in your own filth. This entire system of physical deprivation, however, leads to a significant academic debate. Did it actually work? Did this brutal regiment really create superior soldiers? Or did it just create men with chronic health problems? Proponents, like Xenophon, would point to Sparta's military dominance as proof of its success. They argued that this was the forge that created the world's most feared warriors. But modern medical and physiological knowledge would suggest a different story. Constant exposure to cold, inadequate clothing, and poor hygiene would likely lead to a host of illnesses, from respiratory infections to skin diseases. The physical stress and malnourishment could even stunt growth, contrary to their own beliefs. Historians are divided. Were the ancient accounts exaggerating the positive outcomes, creating a macho myth of Spartan invincibility, or did the system, through a brutal process of natural selection, genuinely weed out the weak, leaving only a core of incredibly resilient survivors? Perhaps the high mortality rate among children in the Agoge, something the pro-Spartan sources conveniently fail to mention, was the true secret to its success. Only the toughest, or luckiest, made it through. The rest were simply casualties of the training, their loss accepted as a necessary cost of maintaining the Spartan edge. For you, these are not abstract questions. This is your daily reality. Every morning, you wake up cold. Every day, you push your body through pain and exhaustion. You no longer remember what it feels like to be truly warm, to be clean, to be comfortable. The cloak is a second skin. Your calloused feet are your only shoes. You are being systematically stripped of every human comfort, reduced to the most basic, hardy version of yourself. Your body is no longer your own. It is a tool being sharpened, and the whetstone is a world of unrelenting hardship. A new and constant companion enters your life, a gnawing, persistent hunger. The food provided to you in the Agoge is intentionally, systematically inadequate. The portions are meager, the quality is basic, and it is never enough to satisfy a growing, physically active boy. You are served a measured amount of simple fare, the most famous of which is the legendary black broth. The recipe for this infamous soup, or melis, ziomas, has been lost to time, but ancient descriptions give us a clue. It was said to be a dark, unappetizing concoction made from boiled pig's blood, pork, salt, and vinegar. Its reputation was fearsome. One story tells of a man from Sybaris, a Greek colony famous for its luxury, who tasted the broth and declared, "Now I understand why the Spartans do not fear death." The implication was clear. Anyone who could stomach this stuff daily would find death a preferable alternative. You and the other boys line up for your rations, and you wolf down the small portion in minutes. It does little to quell the sharp pangs in your stomach. This state-sponsored starvation is not an accident. It is a court tenet of your education. The official justification, recorded by writers like Plutarch and Xenophon, was that a lean, hungry body grew taller and more athletic. They believe, against all modern nutritional science, that overfeeding a boy would make him broad and stocky, while underfeeding him would encourage his body to stretch upwards. But the more practical and sinister reason for the hunger is that it is designed to teach you a vital military skill: foraging and stealing. The state starves you, and then tacitly encourages you to supplement your diet by any means necessary. You must learn to be cunning, silent, and resourceful. You must learn how to survive when official supply lines run dry, a common occurrence in ancient warfare. So your hunger becomes your teacher. It drives you to think, to plan, to take risks. That night, your belly aches. During the day, your thoughts are consumed by food. You watch the helot serfs working in the fields, your eyes lingering on the vegetables they are harvesting. You notice the figs ripening on a tree, the chickens scratching in a farmyard. Every potential source of food is mentally catalogued, its location and the risks of acquiring it assessed. This is not the mischievous raiding of an apple orchard by a normal boy. This is a calculated exercise in survival, a mandatory part of your curriculum. A strange, and often overlooked, aspect of Spartan life is where this potential food would come from. While the Agoge barracks was your home, much of the surrounding land, the Kale Arrows, was owned by individual Spartan families and worked by the helots. So when you were encouraged to steal, you were often stealing from the private estates of the very men who ran the state. It created a buzz or paradox. The state commands you to steal, but the property you are stealing is technically private. This system seems to have operated on a shared, unspoken understanding. The property owner might be furious if his goods were stolen by a helot, but if it was a boy from the Agoge, it was viewed differently as a necessary part of the boy's development, and perhaps even a mark of the boy's promising initiative. This institutionalized hunger creates a dilemma for historians trying to understand the Spartan physique. We have this image of tall, powerful Spartan warriors, the pinnacle of physical perfection, yet we know they were raised on a diet that, by any modern standard, would lead to malnutrition and stunted growth. How can these two things be reconciled? Some historians argued that the stealing aspect is key. Perhaps the official rations were just a baseline, and a successful boy could actually secure a reasonably nutritious diet through his own illicit efforts. The system, therefore, would not just build cunning, but it would also self-select for the most capable boys, who would then be better fed and grow stronger. Others propose a more controversial theory that the accounts of their physical superiority were, in part, propaganda. Perhaps the average Spartan soldier was not a 7-foot-tall giant, but a weary, incredibly tough man of average height, whose reputation was inflated by Spartan myth-making and the fear of their enemies. The super soldier image might be more legend than reality. The academic community continues to debate whether the Agoge's diet produced warriors because of it, or in spite of it. But for you, crouching in the barracks with your stomach twisting into knots, these are not academic concerns. The hunger is real and immediate. It sharpens your senses. You learn to listen for the sound of a guard's footsteps, to measure the light of the moon, to know the layout of the local farms and storehouses. The hunger is hollowing you out, but it is also filling you with a new kind of intelligence, the predatory cunning of a hunter. You are not just being taught to endure hardship, you are being taught to actively overcome it, even if it means breaking the rules. The state has given you a problem, and now it is waiting to see how you will solve it. Your first real test is about to begin, not in the training yard, but in the shadows of the night. The hunger gnaws at you, a constant, dull ache that sharpens into a piercing pang in the dead of night. It becomes the driving force behind your actions, overriding the fear of punishment. You and the other boys in your age law begin to whisper. After the Irand has fallen asleep, it is no longer a question of if you will steal, but how and when. The planning is meticulous, a silent, desperate conspiracy. Your target is modest, at least for the first attempt. A small plot of turnips on the edge of a nearby farm. It is a calculated risk. The farm is part of a Kale Arrows owned by a Spartan citizen, but it is tended by helots. The biggest danger is not the owner, but the overseer or a watchdog. You study the routines for days. You learn when the workers leave the fields, when the moon will be darkest, which paths offer the most cover. One night, the time comes. Under the cloak of a new moon, you and two other boys slip out of the barracks. Every sound is magnified in the silence. The rustle of your cloak, the snap of a twig underfoot, they sound like thunder to your own ears. Your bare feet, now tough and calloused, are in acid, allowing you to move with a stealth you never thought possible. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and adrenaline. You reach the field. The dark shapes of the turnip greens are barely visible against the black earth. You drop to your belly, wriggling forward like a snake. The damp soil is cold against your skin. The air smells of earth and growing things, a scent that makes your empty stomach clench with anticipation. You work quickly, your fingers digging into the soil, pulling the small, firm globes from the ground. You stuff them into a pouch you fashioned from a piece of cloth. You don't dare take too many, just enough to stave off the worst of the hunger for a day or two. The journey back is even more fraught with tension. Every shadow seems to hold a threat. You imagine the coarse grip of a hand on your shoulder, the sharp bark of a voice demanding to know what you are doing. But you make it back to the barracks undetected. You and your co-conspirators share your prize in the darkness, wolfing down the raw, earthy turnips with a primal urgency. The taste is sublime. It is the taste of success, of survival, of a small victory won against the system designed to break you. This is your real education. It's not happening in the drills or the marches. It's happening here, in the shadows. You are learning field craft, infiltration, and resourcefulness. You are learning to assess risk, to trust your instincts, and to work as part of a small, covert team. These are the skills of a raider, a scout, a soldier operating behind enemy lines. The state starves you to force you to learn these things for yourself. The lessons you learn in the dark are the ones that will truly keep you alive in a campaign. A fascinating and somewhat counterintuitive detail of this system involved the gods. While you are being trained to be a thief, you are also being raised in a deeply pious society. The Spartans were famously religious. Before every major decision, every battle, they would consult the oracles and make extensive sacrifices. How did they reconcile this piety with the state-sponsored program of theft? The answer lies in their specific view of morality. In the context of the Agoge, stealing was not seen as a sin against the gods. It was a test of heat or excellence. The crime was not the act of stealing itself. The crime was being clumsy, slow, or stupid enough to get caught. It was a failure of skill, not a failure of morals. You could probably even make a small offering to the gods for a successful night's raid without any sense of hypocrisy. It was a test they wanted you to pass. This unique moral framework leads to a debate among classicists. Was the theft curriculum primarily about practical skills? Or was it a form of psychological warfare against the Helot population? The Helots were the state-owned serfs, a massive, subjugated population that vastly outnumbered the Spartan citizens. They were a constant source of fear for the Spartans, who lived in dread of a revolt. By encouraging their best and brightest youths to constantly prey upon the Helot-run farms, were the Spartans killing two birds with one stone? They were training their future soldiers while also creating a constant, low-level state of terror and instability among the people they ruled. The young Spartan boys, moving like ghosts through the countryside, would have been a terrifying rumor, a specter of the state's power that could appear anywhere, at any time. As you become more daring, your targets evolve. A piece of cheese from a dairy, a loaf of bread cooling on a windowsill, perhaps even a chicken from a coop. Each mission is more complex, requiring more planning and more nerve. You learn the value of a distraction, the art of a silent entry, the precise moment to grab and flee. You become nocturnal, your senses sharpened by the darkness. The boy who was once afraid of the dark is now its master. He moves through it with a quiet confidence, a hunter in his natural element. The hunger is still there, a constant companion, but now it is also a tool. It is the fuel that powers your transformation from a frightened child into a cunning survivor. The inevitable happens. One evening, emboldened by a string of successful raids, you and a friend attempt a more audacious theft. You are targeting a small storehouse where smoked meats are kept. The prize is immense, the risk exhilarating, but this time, you make a mistake. A loose floorboard creaks under your weight. A dog, previously silent, erupts, in a frenzy of barking. A moment later, a figure appears in the doorway, silhouetted by the moonlight, holding a heavy stick. It's Yoiren. He doesn't look surprised. He looks almost expectant. You are caught. There is no escape, no place to run. The feeling is not one of guilt, but of cold, sickening failure. You have been clumsy. You have been loud. You have been caught. This is the true crime. You are dragged back to the barracks, not with anger, but with a kind of grim satisfaction. Your punishment will be a public spectacle, a lesson for the entire age law. You are stripped of your cloak and tied to a post in the center of the training yard. The other boys are gathered to watch, their faces impassive in the torchlight. They know the rules. They know what is coming. Yoiren addresses the group. His voice is calm, almost academic. He does not chastise you for the act of trying to steal the meat. In fact, he might even praise the ambition of the target. His criticism is directed entirely at your execution. You were slow. You were noisy. You failed to account for the dog. You were, in a word, incompetent. And incompetence must be beaten out of you. He takes up a whip. It is not a simple rod, but a tough, flexible switch, likely made of willow or birch. The first lash cuts through the cold night air and lands across your back with a sharp, stinging crack. The pain is immediate, a white-hot fire that radiates across your skin. Your every instinct screams at you to cry out, to beg for mercy, to pull away. But you can't. You bite down on your lip, tasting blood. You stare straight ahead at the impassive faces of your peers. To show pain would be a second failure, a deeper disgrace than being caught. The blows continue, falling in a steady, methodical rhythm. Each one is a lesson. This is for the creaking floorboard. This is for the barking dog. This is for your slow retreat. Your back becomes a grid of searing lines. Your mind starts to detach from the pain, floating in a strange, hazy space. You focus on your breathing, on keeping your body still, on the faces of the other boys. Their silent judgment is almost as painful as the whip. This ritual of public flogging is a cornerstone of the Agoge. It is a tool for enforcing discipline, but its purpose is more complex than simple punishment. It is a performance of endurance. By withstanding the pain in silence, you are demonstrating your Spartan virtue. You are proving that your will is stronger than your body's agony. In a bizarre way, being caught and flogged offers a twisted path to honor. A boy who takes his punishment without a whimper earns a grudging respect from his peers and his superiors. He has failed the test of stealth, but he has passed the test of endurance. One of the strangest and most extreme examples of this principle was the annual cheese contest at the sanctuary of Artemis or Thea. This was a religious ritual that escalated into a spectacle of pure brutality. Cheeses were stacked on the altar of the goddess, and boys like you had to try and steal them. But standing between you and the altar were the Irenes and other older youths. Armed with whips, they would flog the boys relentlessly as they tried to dash for the cheese. It was not a game, it was a bloody ordeal. Boys would be beaten until they were covered in welts, sometimes even to the point of collapse. The one who endured the most, who stole the most cheese despite the vicious slashing, was hailed as the victor, the Phalanx. In Roman times, this ritual became a popular tourist attraction, with spectators gathering in a specially built amphitheater to watch Spartan youths be flogged, sometimes to death, for the honor of the goddess. This obsession with enduring pain raises a challenging question for historians of emotion. What did this do to the Spartan mind? Did it truly create men who were masters of their pain, or did it create deeply traumatized individuals who were simply numb, disconnected from their own bodies and feelings? The modern understanding of psychology would point to the latter. This level of systematic, ritualized violence in childhood is a recipe for creating adults with profound psychological scarring, unable to form healthy emotional bonds, and prone to explosive aggression. The Spartan soldier's famous battle rage, his Immerse, might not have been a product of trained courage, but the explosive release of a lifetime of suppressed pain and trauma. We see them as disciplined, but they may have been deeply damaged. The flogging finally ends. You are cut down from the post. Your back are a fiery mess. You are not offered any medical attention or words of comfort. You are simply expected to take your cloak and find your place among the other boys. You do so. Your movements stiffened, agonizing. You have failed, but you have also survived. You have learned your lesson. Next time, you will be quieter. You will be faster. You will be smarter. You will not get caught. The pain will eventually fade, but the memory of your failure and the silent, judging eyes of your brothers will burn far longer. While your body is being hardened through deprivation and pain, your mind is being sharpened in a very particular way. You are taught to read and write, but only to a basic, functional level. There is no deep dive into poetry, philosophy, or the arts. Such pursuits are considered frivolous, luxuries that create soft, contemplative men rather than decisive warriors. Literacy for you is a tool, not an avenue for intellectual exploration. You need to be able to read a military dispatch, not debate the meaning of a Sophocles play. Your real mental training comes in the form of verbal discipline. You are taught to speak in a style that would become legendary throughout the ancient world. Laconic. The name itself comes from Laconia, the region where Sparta is located. It is the art of extreme brevity, of conveying the maximum amount of meaning with the minimum number of words. Long, flowing speeches are seen as a sign of Athenian indulgence and untrustworthiness. A true Spartan speaks in short, pithy, often cutting remarks. This is drilled into you from a young age. If the Iran asks you a question, you are expected to answer directly and concisely. A rambling response, an excuse, or any unnecessary word is met with instant punishment, often a sharp bite on the thumb. You learn to think before you speak, to distill your thoughts down to their absolute essence. Silence is valued far more than idle chatter. The barracks is a quiet place, punctuated by commands and brief, functional exchanges. This linguistic training serves a clear, military purpose. In the noise and chaos of a battlefield, complex orders are easily misunderstood. A short, sharp command is clear and effective. It also cultivates a certain mindset, one of action over deliberation. You are not being trained to persuade, but to command and obey. The laconic phrase is the verbal equivalent of a spear thrust direct, efficient, and with no wasted motion. Many famous examples of this laconic would have survived. When Philip I of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great, was conquering Greece, he sent a threatening message to Sparta. It read, "You are advised to submit without further delay, for if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raise your city." The Spartan hordes the elected leaders sent back a reply of a single word, "if." The sheer, arrogant confidence of that response is breathtaking. It communicates everything. We are not afraid of you. We do not believe your threats. Then we challenge you to try. An even more obscure, but revealing, aspect of your verbal education is the way you are taught to interact at the communal meals. As you get older, you will be allowed to join the men in their public mess halls. Here, the Iran or another older citizen will often pose questions to the boys to sharpen their wits. They might ask something like, "Who is the best man in the city?" or "What do you think of this law?" Your answer must be clever, concise, and demonstrate sound, practical judgment. A foolish or long-winded answer would be met with ridicule. It was a kind of intellectual sparring, designed to make you quick-witted and grounded in Spartan values. It was a public test of your mind, just as the floggings were a public test of your body. However, this focus on brevity and action-oriented thinking leads to a historical debate about the Spartan intellect. Were the Spartans genuinely anti-intellectual? Or is that an unfair caricature created by their Athenian rivals? The traditional view, heavily influenced by Athenian writers like Plato and Thucydides, paints the Spartans as brutish, uncultured thugs who were good at fighting and little else. They left behind no great works of philosophy, drama, or history. Their architecture was plain, their art functional. But some modern historians are pushing back against this stereotype. They argue that the Spartans possessed a different kind of intelligence. It wasn't the abstract, speculative intelligence of Athens, but a highly practical, strategic, and political intelligence. Sparta maintained its power for centuries, not just through military might, but through shrewd diplomacy, a complex system of alliances, and a stable, if brutal, constitution to manage a restive Hellid population, navigate the treacherous politics of the Greek world, and maintain their unique social system required immense political and social acumen. They might not have written philosophy, but they lived a highly complex political philosophy every day. Their intelligence was embodied in their laws, their institutions, and their actions, not in their books. The lack of a written intellectual tradition, this revisionist view argues, doesn't mean a lack of intellect, but rather a different set of cultural priorities. You, of course, are not concerned with how future historians will judge your culture's intelligence. You are focused on surviving the next question from your Iren. You learn to listen more than you speak. You learn that a well-timed, witty retort can earn you more respect than a long explanation. You learn that the most powerful statements are often the shortest. Your mind is being forged just like your body stripped of all that is unnecessary, leaving only a hard, efficient core. You are learning that in Sparta, words are not for self-expression, they are weapons, and a good soldier never wastes his ammunition. The hierarchy within the Agoge is not just a simple matter of age. It is a dynamic, often violent, system of dominance and submission that actively pits you against your peers. The older boys, particularly the Irenes and their prefects, are not just your instructors, they are your tormentors. They are given almost unlimited authority to bully, harass, and brutalize the younger boys. This is not random cruelty, it is an officially sanctioned part of the training. The logic behind this system is, from the Spartan perspective, brutally simple. It is meant to toughen you up, to make you resilient to hardship and casual cruelty. It also serves to establish and reinforce a pecking order. Then the Agoge, as in a wolf pack, you must find your place. You are either dominant or submissive, a leader or a follower. This constant struggle for status is believed to prepare you for the harsh realities of military life. It teaches you to obey those above you without question, and to command those below you with unquestioned authority. The bullying takes many forms. It can be physical, a sudden, unprovoked punch or kick, a wrestling match that is allowed to go too far, a game that is really just an excuse for a beating. The older boys will often contrive situations to test you. They might accidentally trip you and then punish you for being clumsy. They might give you a contradictory or impossible order, then beat you for failing to carry it out. The goal is to keep you off balance, to ensure you are always wary, always deferential to your superiors. It can also be psychological. You are subjected to a constant barrage of insults and ridicule, designed to break down your pride and expose any emotional weakness. Your every action is scrutinized, your every mistake magnified. The older boys have an almost predatory instinct for finding a younger boy's insecurities and exploiting them. This psychological pressure is, for some, even harder to endure than the physical violence. You learn that the best way to survive is to become invisible, to attract as little attention as possible, but that is only a short-term solution. To truly thrive in this system, you cannot remain a passive victim. You must, in turn, become a perpetrator. The system encourages you to prove your own toughness by inflicting pain on those even younger or weaker than you. A boy who refuses to participate in the bullying of a newcomer might himself be seen as weakened, become the new target. It creates a vicious cycle, a cascade of violence where brutality is passed down from one age group to the next. A particularly strange and little understood aspect of this was the institutionalized fighting. The boys were explicitly encouraged to fight one another to settle disputes. The Iran would not break up a fight, but would watch it, judging the boys on their technique, their aggression, and their refusal to give up. These weren't just scuffles, they were bare-knuckle brawls. However, there was a crucial rule: you were not allowed to bite or gouge. This was considered un-Spartan and more like the fighting style of a wild animal. The use of fists and wrestling techniques was seen as a display of skill. That took me. So even in the midst of this state's ancient violence, there was a peculiar code of conduct. It was organized brutality. This institutionalized bullying creates a profound and difficult question for historians. Did this system build unit cohesion, or did it create a society of deeply resentful and aggressive individuals? The official Spartan line would be that it forged unbreakable bonds. Boys who survived this crucible together, who fought and bled together, would develop a fierce loyalty to one another that would serve them well in the phalanx. The shared experience of suffering was supposed to create a brotherhood of warriors. However, many scholars now challenge this view. They argue that a system based on fear, dominance, and ritualized abuse is more likely to create bullies and victims, not a cohesive band of brothers. It would foster an environment of mistrust, where every peer is a potential rival and every superior a potential threat. The loyalty it created may have been a fragile thing, born of a shared fear of punishment rather than genuine affection or respect. Instead of building a unified team, it may have simply created a collection of isolated, hyper-aggressive individuals, held together only by the iron cage of discipline. This debate touches upon the very nature of the Spartan spirit. Was it a model of communal solidarity, or a dysfunctional culture of violence? For you, the system is a daily navigation of threats and alliances. You learn which older boys are the most sadistic, and how to avoid them. You form cautious friendships with boys in your own age law. A small circle of trust in a world of hostility. You learn to fight back when you have to show enough aggression to be left alone, but not so much that you become a target for an even bigger boy. You feel the constant, grinding pressure to be hard, to be cruel, to suppress any instinct towards compassion. Compassion is a liability here. It will be interpreted as weakness, and weakness is an invitation for attack. So you learn to harden your heart. You watch a younger boy being beaten and you feel nothing, or you force yourself to feel nothing. This emotional numbness is your shield. It is the only way to survive the psychological warfare of the Agoge. Your regimen of hardship extends to every corner of your life, including the act of bathing. In the rest of the Greek world, baths is worse enters of social life. Men would gather to wash with warm water, scrape their skin clean with a tool called a strigil, anoint themselves with olive oil, and relax. For a Spartan boy, this entire concept is alien, a symbol of the decadent offness you are being trained to despise. Your bathing is a brutal, functional affair. Periodically, you and your age law are marched down to the banks of the Eurotas River. The Eurotas is not a gentle, meandering stream. It is fed by the snowmelt from the Taygetus Mountains, and its water is shockingly cold, even in the summer months. There is no gradual entry. On the command of your Iran, you are to plunge into the frigid water without hesitation. The shock of the cold is breathtaking. It steals the air from your lungs and makes your muscles seize. The immediate instinct is to scramble back to the bank, but you must stay in, splashing the icy water over your head and arms, scrubbing away the grime of the training yard with nothing but your hands and the abrasive river sand. The purpose of this is twofold. Firstly, it is a test of will, to willingly and repeatedly subject yourself to the misery of the cold water is an act of mental discipline. It reinforces the core lesson of the Agoge mind over body. Secondly, the Spartans held a specific physiological belief about cold water. They thought it tempered the flesh, making it firm, resilient, and less susceptible to the elements. They believed warm water opened the pores and made the skins often weak, while the cold shock of the river hardened the body, making it a more effective fighting machine. It was a form of physical conditioning that, like your single cloak and bare feet, was designed to make you impervious to the environment. After the brief, miserable bath, you emerge onto the bank, shivering uncontrollably. You are not given a towel to dry yourself. You are expected to dry in the open air, your body learning to generate its own warmth. The feeling of the cold wind on your wet skin in the cooler months is a unique form of torture. There is no comfort, only the command to endure. They particularly curious and was discussed. Detail is the Spartan aversion to oils. In the hot, dry climate of Greece, olive oil was a vital part of hygiene. It was used to clean the skin. The oil would be slathered on and then scraped off with the strigil, taking dirt and dead skin with it, moisturize and protect from the sun. The gleaming, oiled bodies of athletes were a hallmark of the Greek gymnasium, that you are forbidden from using it. This denial of a basic comfort and cleaning agent meant your skin was perpetually dry, chapped, and exposed. It was another small, daily reminder that you were different, that you were being denied the common comforts of other Greeks. You were to be weathered and coarse, not sleek and polished. This practice of cold water immersion and denial of basic hygiene leads to a historical debate about Spartan health and appearance. The romanticized image, from statues and later art, is of a physically perfect warrior. But what was the reality? Historians who take a more medical approach suggest that the average Spartan youth was likely anything but the picture of health. The combination of poor nutrition, inadequate clothing, bare feet, and brutal hygiene practices would have made them highly susceptible to a range of ailments. They would have suffered from frequent respiratory infections, skin diseases like scabies and fungal infections, and feet that were a mess of cuts, sores, and frostbite. Some scholars argue that the Agoge must have had an incredibly high attrition rate, not just from the violence, but from simple disease. Only those with the most robust immune systems would have survived to adulthood. So, the legendary toughness of the Spartan warrior might not have been a result of superior training for all, but rather the result of a brutal filtering process that left only the hardiest survivors. Was the Spartan system producing toughness, or just filtering for it by letting the less resilient perish? You, standing shivering on the bank of the Eurotas, are not thinking about your immune system. You are focused on the simple, animal act of getting warm. You learn to rub your arms and legs vigorously, to move around, to do anything to fight off the bone-deep chill. You look at the river with a mixture of dread and respect. It is your adversary, another obstacle the state has placed in your path for you to overcome. It is another part of the relentless process of stripping you down, of removing every layer of comfort until all that is left is a core of pure, unyielding endurance. The cold bath is not about getting clean. It is about reminding you, yet again, that your comfort is meaningless. The only thing that matters is your ability to withstand, to continue, to obey. Your education is not entirely devoid of what other Greeks might recognize as culture. You are taught music and dance, but their purpose is radically different from the artistic expression found in Athens or Corinth. For you, music and dance are tools of war. They are instruments for instilling discipline, coordinating movement, and steeling the soul for battle. You learn to play the flute, the aulos, but you are not taught to play soaring, individualistic melodies. You learn to play the stark, rhythmic tunes that accompany marching and drills. The flute's high, piercing sound is used to keep time, to ensure that the entire age law, and later the entire phalanx, moves as one. The rhythm of the flute becomes ingrained in you, an auditory signal for synchronized action. When you hear that specific beat, your body knows to step, to turn, to advance. It is a form of auditory conditioning, bypassing conscious thought and embedding the rhythm of the army directly into your muscle memory. your singing is similarly functional. You do not sing songs of love or mythic tales of individual heroes like Achilles. You sing war chants and patriotic hymns. The lyrics, composed by Spartan poets like Tyrtaeus, are all about courage, duty, and the glory of dying for the state. They praise the man who stands firm in the front rank, who protects his comrades, and who scorns the coward who flees. These are not just songs, they are propaganda, repeated daily until their message is etched into your mind. You sing them on the march, in the barracks, and around the campfire. The act of singing them together, your voice blending with dozens of others, reinforces your bond to the group and your commitment to its ideology. The most visually striking part of your cultural training is the piraki, the war dance. This is not a dance of celebration or joy. It is a full body, armed drill, a form of shadow, fighting performed in unison, dressed in your cloak, and eventually with a small shield and spear. You and your group perform a complex sequence of movements meant to simulate combat. You practice advancing, retreating, dodging blows, thrusting with a spear, and protecting yourself with your shield. The dance is fast, aggressive, and physically demanding. It is performed to the driving rhythm of the flute. To an outsider, it might look like a chaotic, violent display, but for you, it is a lesson in precision and group coordination. Every movement must be perfectly synchronized with the boys around you. A misstep could mean tripping a comrade or leaving a gap in the imaginary line. The dance is a physical manifestation of the phalanx, ideal group of individuals moving with the speed and unity of a single organism. It is a dance of death, rehearsed until it is second nature. A little known and rather peculiar detail is that these dances and choral performances were one of the few areas where Spartan boys were put on public display. During religious festivals, the different age-lie would compete against each other in choral and dance competitions. These were not judged on artistic merit in the Athenian sense. The judges, the city's elders, were looking for precision, discipline, aggression, and perfect unison. A victory in one of these competitions was a huge source of pride for an age-law and its Iren. It was a way to publicly demonstrate the quality of your training, to prove that your herd was the most disciplined, the most unified, the most Spartan. This militarization of the arts leads to a historical debate. Did Sparta have an artistic soul that was crushed by its military culture? Or was this functional, martial art the true expression of its soul? In the earlier, archaic period around the 7th and 6th centuries BC, Sparta was known for producing beautiful pottery, exquisite ivory carvings, and fine bronze work. Laconian artists were famous throughout Greece, but by the classical period, the time of your training, this artistic output had dwindled to almost nothing. The traditional explanation is that the increasingly rigid and militaristic social structure, probably solidified in the 6th century BC, stamped out individual creativity. The state demanded conformity, and art thrives on individuality. But a revisionist view suggests that the Spartans didn't stop being artistic, they simply channeled all their artistic and aesthetic energies into a single, all-consuming project, the creation of the perfect warrior and the perfect army. From this perspective, the flawless coordination of the war dance, the haunting power of the marching songs, and the stark, terrifying beauty of a fully armed phalanx moving in perfect unison was their art. It was a living, breathing, kinetic sculpture made of disciplined human bodies. Their aesthetic was one of order, power, and deadly function. They didn't abandon art, they redefined it. The phalanx was their masterpiece. As you move through the steps of the piraki, the flute's melody driving you on, you are not thinking about art history. You are focused on your footwork, on the position of your shield, on the rhythm that binds you to the boys on your left and right. The music is not in your ears, it is in your blood. The dance is not a performance. It is a rehearsal for the only thing that truly matters. You are learning the poetry of the spear, the rhythm of the shield wall. This is Spartan culture. It is stark, it is brutal, and its only purpose is to prepare you to kill and to die. As you grow older and more resilient, you become eligible to participate in one of the Agoge's most infamous and brutal rituals, the contest at the altar of Artemis or Thea. This is not a simple athletic competition. It is a fusion of religious rite, public spectacle, and a savage test of endurance, all disguised as a game of theft. The sanctuary itself is an important religious site for the Spartans, dedicated to a fierce, Creed-oric goddess who was later conflated with Artemis, the hunter. The setup for the annual festival is simple and cruel. Cheeses are placed upon the goddess's altar. Your objective, along with other boys from various age lie, is to run from a starting line, dash to the altar, and steal as many cheeses as you can before retreating. The challenge lies in what stands between you and the altar. The space is guarded by the IRNS and other older youths, and they are all armed with heavy whips. Their task is to prevent you from reaching the altar by flogging you without mercy. There are no rules of engagement. They will lash your back, your legs, your arms, any part of you they can reach as you make your desperate sprint. The event is a chaotic, violent whirlwind. The air fills with the sharp crack of the whips, the grunts of the runners, and the roar of the crowd. Yes, the crowd. This is a public event. The city's elders, your fathers, and other citizens gather to watch. Their presence adds another layer of pressure. You are not just enduring pain, you are performing your endurance for the entire city. Your first time participating, the fear is palpable. You see the boys ahead of you stumbling back, their backs already crisscrossed with bleeding welts, but the imperative to compete is absolute. To refuse would be an act of cowardice, a source of unimaginable shame. So when it's your turn, you run. You fix your eyes on the altar, on the pale yellow shapes of the cheese. The world narrows to that single goal. You sprint forward, and the first blow lands across your shoulders like a bolt of lightning. The pain is shocking, but you force your legs to keep pumping. Another lash catches your leg, nearly tripping you. You see a boy next to you fall, curling into a ball as the whips rain down on him. You cannot stop. You must not stop. You reach the altar, your hand snatching a single, small cheese. The moment you grab it, you pivot and run back, the whip still pursuing you. You cross the starting line, gasping for air, your back a tapestry of fire. You have succeeded. You have brought back a prize. But the real prize is not the cheese. It is the fact that you endured the ordeal. The boy who manages to steal the most cheese while being flogged is declared the winner. The Baumann Eichel victor. He is celebrated as a hero, his name honored for the year. This ritual, so bizarre to an outside observer, perfectly encapsulates the Spartan value system. It combines religious piety, a test of theft celebrating cunning and speed, and, above all, the supreme virtue of enduring pain without flinching. A particularly strange and grim detail is how this ritual evolved over time. Centuries later, under Roman rule, Sparta became something of a living museum, a tourist destination for wealthy Romans fascinated by its legendary toughness. The ritual at the altar of Artemis, or Thea, became the main attraction. It was commercialized and made even more bloody to satisfy the paying customers. A theater was built around the altar so more spectators could get a good view. The game aspect faded, and it became a pure diamastigos, a ritual flogging. Youths would be tied to the altar and whipped, sometimes to death, while their parents reportedly looked on with pride. It was the final, grotesque exaggeration of a value system that had always prized endurance over life itself. This ritual raises the difficult question for anthropologists and historians of religion: what was its true purpose? Was it, as the Spartans claimed, a pious offering of blood and endurance to a demanding goddess? The original myth behind it told of an ancient time when the altar was stained with human blood from a sacrifice, and the flogging was a less extreme substitute to appease the goddess. Or was its religious significance just a cover for its social function? From this perspective, The ritual was a powerful to love social control. It was a public demonstration of the Agoge's effectiveness, showing the citizens that their sons were being forged into suitably tough and unyielding vessels of Spartan virtue. It was a rite of passage that viscerally separated the men from the boys and reinforced the brutal hierarchy of the state. Was it about pleasing the gods? Or was it about terrorizing boys into a state of absolute submission and celebrating that submission as a civic good? The line between religious devotion and state-sponsored violence is, in this case, almost impossible to draw. You stumble away from the altar, the small, hard cheese clutched in your hand. Your back is bleeding. Every breath is an agony. But as you look around at the other boys, you see a grudging respect in their eyes. You did not cry out. You did not falter. You have passed the test. The pain is temporary. The honor, in this strange, brutal world, is everything. In the world of the Agoge, your body becomes a living record of your training. It is a canvas upon which the lessons of pain, endurance, and violence are written. Scars are not seen as blemishes to be hidden, but as badges of honor, tangible proof of your resilience. A smooth, unblemished back on an older boy would be a sign of shame, an indication that he had somehow shirked his duties or was not subjected to the same rigors as his peers. You learn to treat your own wounds as a matter of routine. After a particularly harsh beating or a bloody brawl with another boy, you are not sent to a healer. Medical attention is reserved for serious, life-threatening injuries sustained in a manner deemed honorable. The everyday cuts, bruises, and welts from whippings are your own responsibility. You learn to clean a cut with cold river water, to grit your teeth as you pull a splinter from your foot, to ignore the throbbing ache of a deep bruise. This self-sufficiency is part of your training. A soldier in the field cannot expect a physician to be at his side for every minor injury. You are being taught to be tough, to be practical, and to not let pain impede your function. You see the older boys, their bodies a roadmap of past injuries, and you learn to emulate their stoicism. They carry their scars with a quiet pride, as a testament to the ordeals they have survived. Each scar has a story, a lesson learned, this one from a whip at the Artemis or Thea festival, that one from a training spear that slipped, another from a fight over a stolen piece of bread. You learn to see your own body as a tool, an instrument of the state. Its purpose is to be strong, durable, and effective in combat. Pain is simply feedback, information to be processed and then ignored. This detachment is a crucial psychological skill. If you are wounded in battle, you cannot afford to be overwhelmed by the pain or fear. You must be able to continue fighting, to hold your place in the phalanx, to protect the man next to you. The constant, low-level pain of the Agoge is a form of inoculation against the greater agony of the battlefield. A little-known but fascinating aspect of Spartan views on the body relates to how they treated their dead. After a battle, most Greek states would go to great lengths to recover the bodies of their fallen citizens for proper burial at home. For the Spartans, this was also important, but with a unique twist. The only Spartans who were considered worthy of having their names inscribed on a tombstone were men who died in battle and women who died in childbirth. This parallel is incredibly revealing. It suggests that the Spartans saw these two acts, giving your life for the state in war and risking your life to create a new citizen for the state, as the two highest forms of civic virtue. Both were seen as a form of combat, a struggle of the body for the good of the collective. A woman's scars from childbirth were, in their own way, as honorable as a man's scars from a spear. It's a rare glimpse into a mindset that elevated civic duty above all else, creating a strange equivalence between the battlefield and the birthing bed. This focus on the honor of a scarred and broken body raises a historical question that is still debated: what was the long-term physical cost of being a Spartan warrior? The romanticized view is that the Agoge produced super soldiers who remained robust and powerful into old age. The reality was likely much different. A life of malnutrition, constant physical trauma, and exposure to the elements would have taken a tremendous toll. Modern sports medicine would tell us that the kind of training they underwent without proper rest, nutrition, or medical care is a recipe for chronic injury. A Spartan veteran in his 40 or 50 was likely a wreck of a man, riddled with arthritis, old fractures that never healed properly, and chronic pain. Their famous toughness might have masked a reality of daily physical suffering that continued long after they left the battlefield. The Spartan system was exceptionally good at producing effective soldiers in their prime, but it was likely just as effective at producing broken old men. Was the price of Sparta's military glory a lifetime of pain for its veterans? It's a side of the story the heroic legends never tell. You look at your own hands, already calloused and scarred. You run a finger over a fresh welt on your arm. The skin still tender and raised. It hurts, but the pain is already becoming a familiar presence. You are learning to live with it, to accept it as a part of who you are. The scars are a map of your journey, each one a marker of a test passed, a pain endured. They are the only medals you will ever be awarded in this brutal school. And in the strange, inverted logic of Sparta, they are the only ones worth having. Your body is being broken, but your spirit, they believe, is being forged into something unbreakable. As you grow, a new element is introduced into your education, one based not on physical hardship, but on ideological poison. You are systematically taught to despise the helots. These are not foreign enemies or distant barbarians. They are the people you see every day, the serfs who work the land that your family owns, the vast, subjugated population upon whose labor the entire Spartan state is built. The helots were a Greek people, originally from Mesene and parts of Laconia, who had been conquered by the Spartans centuries ago. They were not chattel slaves who could be bought and sold individually, but a state-owned serf class, bound to the land. They worked the kale, the agricultural plots assigned to each Spartan citizen, and were forced to hand over a large portion of their harvest, typically half, to their Spartan masters. This arrangement freed up every Spartan male from the need to perform agricultural labor, allowing them to dedicate their entire lives to warfare. The Spartan military machine was, quite literally, fueled by helot labor. But because the helots vastly outnumbered the Spartan citizens by some estimates as much as 10 to 1, they were also a source of constant, paranoid fear. The threat of a massive helot uprising was the central anxiety of Spartan political life. Therefore, your education is designed to instill in you a deep-seated contempt and hatred for them, to ensure that you will never see them as fellow Greeks or even as fully human. This dehumanization is a necessary psychological tool for the brutal system of control that Sparta employs. This indoctrination takes several forms. You hear them spoken of with disdain in the barracks, referred to as animals, as inherently cowardly and untrustworthy. But the lessons are also more direct and cruel on certain occasions. The Immerse will force a group of helots to get drunk on unmixed wine, which was considered barbaric by other Greeks, who always diluted their wine with water. The helots are then paraded before you and the other boys, stumbling, slurring their words, and behaving foolishly. The Iren will point to them and say, "This is what weakness looks like. This is what happens to men without discipline." It is a piece of living theater designed to create a visceral association in your mind between helots and shameful, contemptible behavior. You are also taught to fear them. Stories are told of helot treachery, of their supposed plots and secret resentments. You are warned never to trust them, never to show weakness in front of them. This creates a psychological barrier, a wall of suspicion that makes any form of normal human interaction impossible. They are the other, the internal enemy against whom you must always be vigilant. A particularly grim and lesser-known part of this system was the annual declaration of war. According to sources like Plutarch, every year the EP Horus, Sparta's highest elected officials, would formally declare war on the Helot population. This was not a joke or a mere formality. It had a terrifying legal and religious implication. It meant that any Spartan could kill a Helot at any time without incurring blood guilt or needing to perform a religious purification. It essentially legalized murder for an entire year, turning the Helots into a population with no right to life, subject to the whims of their masters. This annual declaration provided the legal framework for the state's ancient terrorism used to keep them in line. This constant oppression raises a major historical debate. Was the Spartan system a unique form of military society, or was it better understood as a particularly brutal slave state? Comparable to later examples in world history, the traditional view often focuses on the Spartans themselves, their discipline, their bravery, their political system. The Helots are often treated as a backdrop, a passive labor force. But more recent scholarship has shifted the focus, arguing that you cannot understand Sparta without understanding the Helots. This view frames Spartan society not as a society with slaves, but as a society whose every institution, every custom, and every fear was fundamentally shaped by the problem of managing a huge, hostile slave population. The Agoge, the constant military readiness, the secrecy, the cruelty, all of it can be seen as a desperate, all-consuming effort to maintain control. From this perspective, Sparta is less a story about military virtue and more a story about the profound and corrupting effects of living as a garrison inel, and that is not truly your own. You are now a teenager, your body hardened by years of training. You see a Helot working in a field, his back bent under the sun. Years of indoctrination have done their work. You do not see a man like yourself. You see something lesser, something to be watched, controlled, and, if necessary, eliminated. You have learned the most important lesson for a future member of the ruling class: a complete and total lack of empathy for those you rule. The shadow of the Helots looms over everything, and you are being trained to be the whip that keeps them in the dark. As you enter your mid-teens, you notice a change in the way you are perceived. The generalized brutality of the younger years begins to be replaced by a more focused, individual scrutiny. The most formidable figures in your world are no longer just the Irans in charge of your herd, but the full-fledged warriors of the city. The men who have completed the Agoge and are now members of the army and the common mess halls. You see them watching your drills, their gazes assessing and critical, and one day, you realize that one of them is watching you. He is an older man, perhaps in his late 20s. He is not yet married, a member of the bachelor warriors who live in the barracks. He is a veteran of skirmishes, his body bearing the scars to prove it. He is everything you are being trained to be: hard, silent, then radiating an aura of disciplined violence. You start to feel his presence everywhere. He observes your performance in the war dance, your form in wrestling matches, your stoicism during punishments. His attention is a heavy weight, a mixture of threatened strange, terrifying form of flattery. Then, he approaches you. The moment is brief and public. He speaks your name, a rare occurrence, and informs you that he will be taking an interest in your training. Just like that, you have been chosen. You have acquired a mentor. In the language of Sparta, he is your Aristes, an older lover or admirer, and you are his Diromenos, his beloved. This is not a secret or informal arrangement. It is a deeply ingrained social institution, a cornerstone of the Agoge's later stages. The official purpose of this relationship is pedagogical. This warrior is now your personal guide, your role model. It is his duty to oversee your moral and physical development, to shape you into the ideal Spartan citizen. He is meant to inspire you to acts of courage and excellence, to instill in you the supreme love of honor. The dynamic of your life shifts dramatically. You are no longer just an anonymous boy in a herd. You belong to someone. This man becomes your personal advocate and your personal tyrant. He might protect you from the casual bullying of other older youths, but his own standards for you are impossibly high. He will punish you more severely for a mistake than any Iran would, because your failure is now a direct reflection on him. Your triumphs bring him honor, your shame brings him disgrace. You are inextricably linked. A fascinating and critical detail of this system is that this responsibility was formally recognized by the state. The Aristes was held legally and socially accountable for the development of his Euromenos. If you, the boy, were to show cowardice, get into a fight improperly, or cry out in pain, your mentor could be the one who was fined or publicly shamed. It was believed that your flaws were a direct result of his poor guidance. This created an incredibly intense bond. He was invested in your success not just out of personal affection or pride, but because his own reputation was on the line. This system was designed to use a personal relationship as a tool for producing perfect soldiers, outsourcing the final stages of character molding to individual veterans. But this brings us to one of the most intensely debated subjects in the study of ancient Sparta. What was the true nature of this relationship? The Spartans themselves, particularly writers like Xenophon, who wanted to present an idealized image to the world, insisted that these bonds were purely platonic. They claimed it was a chaste love, a meeting of minds and spirits focused entirely on virtue and honor. According to this view, any physical expression was considered shameful and unspartan, a corruption of the ideal. The love was for the boy's soul and his potential, not his body. However, almost no modern historian takes this claim at face value. In other parts of the Greek world, such as Athens and Thebes, similar relationships between older men and youths were openly and primarily erotic. The Theban sacred band, an elite military unit composed of 150 pairs of male lovers, was one of the most effective fighting forces in Greece, operating on the principle that a man would fight more fiercely to protect and impress his partner. Given this wider Greek context, many scholars argue that the Spartan insistence on chastity was likely propaganda, a way of making their customs seem more severe and virtuous than those of their rivals. The debate, therefore, is not really if these relationships had a physical dimension, but what that dimension meant. Was it a loving, consensual relationship between partners, or, given the immense agent-power disparity, was it an institutionalized form of abuse, where a vulnerable boy had no real ability to refuse the advances of a powerful warrior who controlled every aspect of his life? Our modern categories of consent, abuse, love, and mentorship do not map neatly onto this ancient practice. It was a complex institution that likely encompassed a whole spectrum of experiences, from genuine affection and guidance to outright exploitation, all sanctioned by the state as a necessary part of making a man. You do not have the language or the context for these debates. You only know your reality. This man is your master. Your entire existence is now bent towards earning his approval. You fight harder in the wrestling pits. You stand straighter in the drills. You bite your lip harder during the floggings, all under his watchful eye. His quiet nod of approval is worth more than any meal. His disappointment is more painful than any whip. Whether he is your teacher, your protector, your master, or your lover is a question you cannot even form. He is all of them. You have been claimed, and your final transformation into a Spartan is now in his hands. As you approach the end of your teenage years, a new and secretive selection process begins. The Agoge has hammered you into shape. Your mentor has refined your skills, but now the state is looking for something more. They are not just looking for soldiers, they are looking for the elite. They need to identify the most intelligent, the most ruthless, and the most self-sufficient of your generation. These are the boys who will become the future leaders of Sparta, and their final test will take place in the shadows. This selection process is informal and shrouded in secrecy. There are no public announcements, no formal examinations. Instead, the Iran-S and the senior warriors who oversee the Agoge are watching. They are looking for a specific set of qualities that go beyond simple obedience and physical toughness. They are looking for initiative, cunning, and a capacity for independent, lethal action. Who are the boys who excel at stealing food, not just for survival, but with a certain flair and ingenuity? Who are the ones who, in the Mac Bros, show not just strength, but tactical thinking? Who has the quietest feet, the sharpest eyes, the coldest nerve? You don't know you are being graded, but you are. Every action is a data point, feeding into a silent, ongoing assessment. You might notice subtle changes. A senior warrior might pull you aside and ask you a hypothetical question about an ambush. An Iren might give you a complex task with minimal instruction, just to see how you handle it. These are probes, small tests designed to gauge your potential for the next terrifying stage of your education. You are being interviewed for a job you don't even know exists. The candidates for this elite track are being groomed for entry into the cryptiai. This word is oft untranslated as secret service or secret police, but its reality was far more sinister. The cryptiai was not a defensive intelligence agency. It was a state-sponsored death squad, an instrument of terror aimed at the heart of the Helot population. Its members were the most promising, undangerous young men of the Agoge, and their final graduation exercise would be murder. One of the most peculiar and telling details about Spartan society is their relationship with dogs. They were famous for breeding a specific type of hound, the Laconian hound, known for its speed and tenacity in hunting. These dogs were valuable assets. Yet, there was a strange saying, recorded by the Roman writer Aelian, that a Spartan dog was not allowed to have puppies within the city walls of Sparta itself. They had to be taken out to the countryside to give birth. The reason given was that the puppies, hearing the constant cries and sounds of the Agoge's brutal training from birth, would grow up to be overly aggressive and frantic. This small piece of animal husbandry lore gives us a chilling insight into the Spartan psyche. They recognized, on some level, that the constant exposure to the sounds of violence in the Agoge was profoundly damaging and could create a kind of uncontrollable, frenzied aggression. They understood this effect in their dogs, but they deliberately subjected their own children to the very same environment. It suggests a conscious understanding of the psychological damage they were inflicting, a damage they deemed necessary and desirable for their future soldiers, but not for their hunting dogs. The existence and function of the cryptiai is a topic of intense historical debate. The main source for its operation is Plutarch, writing centuries after the fact. He describes it as a core institution, where the leaders of the Agoge would send out the most promising young men into the countryside, armed only with a dagger. They were to hide during the day and, at night, emerge to murder any helot they found on the roads. Some historians take this account at face value, seeing the cryptiai as a key pillar of Spartan control, a brutal, efficient tool for terrorizing the helots and eliminating any potential leaders of a revolt. It was both a final exam for the Spartan elite and a pragmatic solution to a demographic problem. However, other scholars are more skeptical. They point out that Plutarch was a moralist, oft uncritical of Spartan cruelty. Was he exaggerating, or even reporting a distorted, anti-Spartan rumor? Some historians, like the French scholar Henri Alexandre Wallon, have argued that the cryptiai was not a permanent institution, but a special measure used only in times of extreme crisis, when a helot revolt seemed imminent. Others, like Paul Cartledge, a leading modern scholar of Sparta, argue that it was real, but its primary purpose was not mass murder, but rather advanced military training. It was a special forces program designed to teach young soldiers how to live off the land, operate behind enemy lines, and develop skills in reconnaissance and covert operations. The killing of helots, in this view, was a secondary benefit or an occasional part of the training, not the main goal. The debate centers on whether the cryptiai was primarily an instrument of training or an instrument of terror. You are unaware of the nuances of this debate. You only know that you have been chosen. You have been singled out. You feel the eyes of your superiors on you, and their gaze is different now. It is not just the look of a trainer assessing a recruit. It is the look of a master craftsman assessing a weapon he has forged, wondering if it is ready for its true and terrible purpose. The final stage of your transformation is about to begin. You will be sent out into the world, not as a soldier in an army, but as a lone predator. The moment of your induction is as unceremonious as it is terrifying. There is no public ritual, no grand speech. You are simply taken aside one evening by your mentor and a high-ranking official, perhaps one of the EP whores himself. The meeting takes place in a secluded spot, away from the prying eyes and ears of your peers. They give you your mission. Their voice is low and devoid of emotion. You are to enter the crypti. You will be sent out from the city. Alone. You will take with you nothing but the clothes on your back, your single reed cloak and a small, sharp dagger. As if OS. You will receive no food, no supplies, no support. You are to disappear into the countryside of Laconia. The rules of engagement are starkly simple. You must survive. You must remain unseen. During the day, you are to hide. You must find cover in the hills, in dense thickets, in ravines, anywhere. You will not be seen by a passing farmer or traveler. You are to move only at night, and at night, your purpose is singular. You are to hunt helots. This is not a mission of reconnaissance. You are not the spy. You are an executioner. The instructions are explicit. You are to kill any helot you encounter traveling the roads or fields after dark. The targets are not random. You are encouraged to seek out the strongest, most proud, and most intelligent-looking helots, the ones who might have the potential to become leaders of a rebellion. You are to be a Sith, trimming the tallest stalks of wheat before they can grow to strong. You are given your dagger. It is a simple, leaf-shaped blade, designed for close quarters work. It feels heavy and cold in your hand. This is your final exam. The Agoge has taught you to endure pain, to obey, and to fight as part of a unit. The crypti will teach you to alone, in the dark, and without witness. It is the capstone of your education in cruelty. You are formally declared a polluted one. This is a strange and fascinating ritual detail. For the duration of your time in the crypti, you are considered ritually impure, an outcast. This serves a practical purpose if you are discovered. The state can disavow all knowledge of you. You are not a soldier on a mission, you are alone, polluted outlaw. But it also serves a psychological one. It severs your ties to the community, reinforcing your isolation. You are truly on your own, a ghost haunting the land. This concept of ritual pollution for state-sanctioned killers has some strange parallels in other cultures, but the Spartan application is unique. A little-known theory suggests this ritual pollution may have also been a way to psychologically manage the act of killing. By declaring the boy unclean before the act, it frames the subsequent murder, not as a personal sin, but as part of a state-mandated ritual. The pollution is part of the process, and it can be cleansed later. Once the mission is complete, it turns murder into a dirty but necessary job, a temporary state of being that can be washed away. It's a form of psychological armor against the guilt that might otherwise accompany such an act. The very name crypti is a source of historical contention. It comes from the Greek word kryptos, meaning hidden or secret. But what exactly was the secret? Was it the existence of the organization itself? This seems unlikely, as writers like Plato and Plutarch clearly knew about it. Was the secret the identities of its members? This is more plausible. But the most compelling argument is that the secret was the activity itself. It was an open secret that the crypti existed, but its specific operations, the nightly murders, the state-sanctioned terrorism were the things that were not spoken of openly. It was a part of the Spartan system that existed in the shadows, acknowledged but not advertised. This duality allowed the Spartans to maintain a public facade of law and order, while simultaneously employing a campaign of brutal, lawless violence to maintain that order. The secret was not the what, but the how. The state needed the terror, but it also needed plausible deniability, both for external perception and, perhaps, for its own conscience. The official turns to leave. Your mentor places a hand on your shoulder. His grip is firm. He says nothing. There are no words of encouragement, no final pieces of advice. His silence is the final lesson. This is a task that you must face in absolute solitude. He has guided you this far, that you must cross this final threshold alone. You look down at the dagger in your hand, then up at the darkening hills that surround Sparta. For more than a decade, your entire world has been the barracks, the training yard, the rigid structure of the Agoge. You have never known true freedom, and you are not being given it now. You are being released into a different kind of prison, a wilderness where you are both the hunter and the hunted. Your initiation is over. You slip out of the city as dusk falls, a lone shadow moving into all, and you are supposed to own, but where you are now the intruder. The first few days are a struggle for pure survival. The skills you thought you had mastered in the Agoge, stealing food, enduring hardship, are now tested in a terrifyingly real way. There is no barracks to return to, no secret stash of stolen turnips. There is only you, the landscape, and a constant, gnawing hunger. During the day, you lie motionless in a ditch or a thicket of thorny bushes, the sun beating down on you. Every sound of birds call, the distant bleating of sheep sends a jolt of adrenaline through you. You are terrified of being discovered. To be seen by a helot is to fail the first rule of the crypti, i.e. remain hidden, so you learn to become part of the earth, to control your breathing, to endure the torment of insects and the stiffness of your limbs. Time stretches and distorts. The daylight hours are an eternity of silent, paranoid waiting. That night, the world transforms. You emerge from your hiding place, your senses screamingly alert. The landscape that was a threat by day is now your hunting ground. You move slowly, using the skills you learned as a child thief, but now with a deadly purpose. Your bare feet, hardened by years in the Agoge, are your greatest asset. You can move over the rocky ground with a silence that is almost supernatural. Your first priority is food and water. You drink from streams, your face buried in the cold, clear water. You stalk the edges of farms, your hunger a physical pain. You steal what you can, a few raw vegetables from a garden, a handful of olives from a tree, perhaps a small, unattended cheese left to cure. But you are not just a thief anymore. You are a predator, and your awareness is split. One part of your mind is focused on survival. The other is constantly scanning for your true prey. You start to see the land not as a collection of farms and fields, but as a tactical map. You learn the paths the helots used to travel between settlements. You identify ambush points and narrow paths, a sharp bend in a road, a place where the shadows are deepest. You become a student of the night, learning the phases of the moon and how its light, or lack thereof, can be used to your advantage. A fascinating but rarely discussed aspect of this experience is the intimate knowledge of the land you have acquired. While the average Spartan citizen lived a life detached from the land that supported him, you, as a member of the cryptia, are forced into a primal connection with it. You learn its secrets, its sounds, its hiding places. You learn the habits of the nocturnal animals. In a strange way, this brutal training makes you more connected to the Laconian countryside than any other Spartan. You are becoming a creature of this place, your senses honed to a razor's edge. You are regressing, shedding the discipline of the phalanx and discovering the instincts of a lone hunter. This process of rewilding raises a significant question for military historians and sociologists. How did this training integrate with the collective discipline required of a phalanx soldier? The cryptia program seems designed to create the ultimate individual operative, a self-reliant, ruthless killer who thrives in isolation. Yet, the entire purpose of the Agoge was to create the ultimate team player, a soldier who suppresses his individuality for the good of the group. How did the Spartans reconcile these two seemingly contradictory training philosophies? The standard answer is that the cryptia was reserved for the future officer class. The experience was meant to give these future leaders an understanding of logistics, terrain, and the psychology of fear, which they could then use to command regular troops more effectively. It was a brief, brutal detour into individualism that was meant to serve the collective in the long run. However, a more cynical view might argue that the two training methods were not as contradictory as they appear. Both were fundamentally about dehumanization. The Agoge dehumanized you by turning you into a cog in a machine. The cryptia dehumanized you by turning you into a predatory animal. Both systems stripped away empathy, compassion, and conventional morality, whether you were killing as part of a wall of shields or as a lone assassin in the dark. The end result was the same: you were an efficient instrument of state violence. The method changed, but the purpose remained constant. You are growing leaner, harder. The soft edges of boyhood have been completely burned away. Your eyes, accustomed to scanning the darkness, have taken on a new intensity. The hunger is still with you, but it has transformed from a desperate into a cold, focused drive. You have mastered the art of survival. You have learned the ways of the night. You have chosen your ambush point. Now, all that is left is to wait. You lie in the shadows, your hand resting on the hilt of your dagger, and you listen for the sound of footsteps on the road. The night is moonless, a blanket of oppressive darkness that swallows all latent sound. It is the perfect night. You are crouched in a dense thicket of oleander bushes, just off a path that connects to Helot villages. You have been watching this path for 3 nights. You know the routines. You know that a man, a strong-looking Helot who works as a blacksmith, often uses this path to return home late. He walks with a confident stride, a sack of tools slung over his shoulder. He is your target. You have been in the wilderness for weeks now. The initial fear has subsided, replaced by a cold, predatory patience. Your humanity has been stripped away, layer by layer, by hunger, solitude, and the constant, low-grade terror of discovery. You are no longer a boy from the Agoge. You are an animal waiting for its prey. You hear it, the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel path. Your heart, which you thought had turned to stone, begins to beat a little faster. Your hand tightens around the hilt of your dagger. The blade is cold against your palm. You control your breathing, making it slow and silent. The figure emerges from the darkness. It is him. You can see his broad shoulders, the dark shape of the sack he carries. He is humming a quiet tune, a folk song you have never heard before. The simple, human sound is jarring. It is a sound from a world you have left behind, a world of homes and songs and simple pleasures. For a fleeting second, you see him not as a target, not as a Helot, but as a man walking home. The moment of hesitation is brief, an echo of a person you used to be. Your training reasserts itself with brutal force. He is the enemy. He is the threat. He is the embodiment of the danger that could one day rise up and destroy everything you have been taught to defend. Your purpose is clear. He draws level with your hiding place. Now, you explode from the bushes, a silent, swift shadow. You have rehearsed this 1,000 times in your mind. There is no war cry, no challenge. This is not a battle. It is an execution. He has no time to react. He turns, his eyes wide with shock, his mouth opening to shout, but the sound never comes. Your first strike is not with the dagger. It is with your other hand, the hard, vicious blow to his throat to silence him. He stumbles backward, gagging. In that moment of disorientation, you close the distance. You bring the dagger up, not in a wild slash, but in a short, powerful thrust. Just as you were taught, the blade sinks into his side, just below the ribs. The feeling is strange, a soft, yielding resistance followed by a sickening warmth that spreads across your hand. He grunts, a sound of pained surprise. He is strong. He tries to fight back, to bring his sack of tools around to use as a weapon. But you are faster. You pull the dagger free and strike again. And again. You are no longer thinking. You are operating on pure, conditioned instinct. The violent choreography of the war dance. The brutal lessons of the brawls, it all comes together in this one terrible moment. He slumps to the ground. The only sounds are his ragged, wet breathing and the frantic pounding of your own heart. You stand over him, your body trembling with adrenaline. His eyes are still open, staring up at the starless sky with a look of profound, bewildered betrayal. Then, the light in them fades. He is still. The silence that follows is deeper and more absolute than any you have ever known. You have done it. You have shed your first blood. You have passed the final, unspoken test of the Cryptia. A little known but chilling detail is what you are supposed to do next. You do not simply flee. You must take a small token, a piece of his clothing or a lock of his hair, as proof of your deed. This is not for public display. It is to be shown, in secret, to the official who sent you. It is the final, grim piece of paperwork in your graduation. This detail transforms the act from a random killing into a bureaucratic requirement, a task to be completed unverified. The historical significance of this act is profound and endlessly debated. Was this a genuine military training exercise? It's hard to see how a clandestine murder of an armed civilian prepares you for the shock of a hoplite charge. The theory that this was simply about eliminating potential helot leaders also has its problems. It seems an inefficient and random way to suppress a population of hundreds of thousands. This leads many historians to the conclusion that the primary purpose of the Cryptia was psychological. It wasn't about training you for war, and it wasn't about strategically weakening the helot population. It was about what the act of murder did to you. By forcing you to kill a helpless person in cold blood, the state was breaking your final link to common human morality. It was ensuring that its future leaders were men who had crossed a line from which there was no return. It was a baptism in blood, designed to create a ruling class that was truly capable of the ruthlessness required to maintain the Spartan system. It was an act of soul murder, committed to ensure your absolute loyalty to the state that commanded it. You take your grim trophy. You do not look at the man's face again. You drag his body off the path, hiding it in the deep shadows. Then you turn and melt back into the wilderness. You are no longer the boy who entered it. That boy is gone forever, left behind on a dark road next to a cooling body. A new creature is walking in his place. A man, a Spartan, a killer. Your return to Sparta is as secretive as your departure. You do not march back through the gates as a returning hero. You slip back into the city at night, a ghost returning to its tomb. You make your way to the designated meeting point, where the same official who sent you out is waiting. You present your proof, the small, grim token of your kill. He inspects it with a dispassionate eye, then gives a single, curt nod. The transaction is complete. You have graduated. You are taken to be cleansed. The ritual is simple: a bath in a consecrated place, a prayer spoken by a priest. The pollution you carried is officially washed away, but you know it's still there, under your skin, behind your eyes. The cold water can't wash away the memory of the man's face, or the feeling of the dagger in your hand. The ritual is a formality, a lie the state tells itself and its chosen sons. When you re-enter the world of the Agoge, you are different. The other boys, the ones who were not chosen, look at you with a mixture of awe and fear. They don't know what you have done, not for certain, but they can see it in you. Your eyes are older. Your movements carry a new weight. The boyish bravado is gone, replaced by a deep, unnerving stillness. You have been to a place they have not, and you have brought a piece of its darkness back with you. You are now an Iran, a youth leader in your early 20s. You are given charge of your own age law, your own herd of 7-year-old boys. You are now the one who wields the whip, who enforces the brutal discipline, who oversees the theft of food and the ritual beatings. You have completed the circle. The victim has become the perpetrator. You look into the faces of the young boys under your command, their fear, their defiance, their desperation, and you see a faint reflection of yourself. But empathy is a luxury you can no longer afford. It is a weakness the system has burned out of you. Your job is not to nurture them, but to break them, just as you were broken. Your job is to forge them into the same kind of weapon you have become. So you do it. You raise the whip. You speak in the cold, clipped tones of your own former masters. You are now a cog in the machine, helping to produce the next generation of cogs. This transition from trainee to trainer is a crucial part of the system's self-perpetuation. By making the graduates of the brutal system its new enforcers, the state ensures that the cycle of violence and indoctrination will continue, unchanged. The men who run the Agoge are not outsiders, they are its most successful products. They know its cruelties intimately because they have endured them all. A fascinating, though grim, psychological detail to consider is the potential for moral injury. In modern military psychology, moral injury refers to the profound psychological wound that can result from perpetrating, failing to prevent, or bearing witness to acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs. While a soldier can be treated for the trauma of seeing a friend die PTSD, it is much harder to treat the trauma of having killed an unarmed person. The act of returning from the crypti and then being forced to inflict the same abuse on children that was inflicted upon you is a recipe for catastrophic moral injury. This leads to a historical debate: was the Spartan warrior class a society of proud, well-adjusted patriots, or a population of deeply traumatized, emotionally stunted men? The heroic tradition, both ancient and modern, paints them as the former. They are the disciplined, stoic heroes of Thermopylae. But a more critical, psychologically informed perspective suggests the latter. This view posits that Spartan society was essentially a military cult, one that systematically created generations of men who were disconnected from their own humanity, prone to extreme violence, and incapable of normal emotional responses. Their famous discipline might have been a form of hypervigilance. Their bravery a disregard for a life they had been taught was worthless. You look at your own reflection, perhaps in a polished bronze shield. The face that stares back is a stranger's. It is the face of a man, lean and hard. The eyes are empty of fear, but they're also empty of joy, of warmth, of anything that you might remember from your earliest childhood. You have lost something essential in the wilderness of the crypti, something that can never be recovered. You have gained power, status, and the respect of your peers. You are a success story in the world's most demanding educational system. But you are also an empty vessel, filled with the discipline and ideology of the state, but hollowed out within. Your journey through the Agoge is complete. You have been unmade as a boy, and remade as a Spartan. And now, you will spend the rest of your life proving that the sacrifice was worth it. Your transformation is now formally recognized. At the age of 20, you have officially graduated from the Agoge. Your next and most important step is to gain entry into SYS Sidian, one of the common mess halls where the adult male citizens eat their evening meal. This is not an automatic promotion. Membership is the defining marker of a full Spartan citizen, and it is not guaranteed. You must be elected. The mess hall itself is a plain, functional building, like everything else in Sparta. Inside, about 15 men, your future brothers in arms, are gathered. These are the men who will form your primary social and military unit for the rest of your life. You will fight beside them, and if necessary, die beside them. The bond of the mess hall is intended to be stronger than the bond of family. The election process is a curious and starkly simple ritual. A steward walks around the room holding a container. Each current member of the mess takes a small piece of bread, like a bread roll, in their hand. They walk past the container and drop the bread in. If they approve of you, the candidate. They simply drop the bread as it is. But if they vote against your entry, they squeeze the bread flat in their fist before dropping it in. It is a secret ballot, a rare moment of individual, democratic choice in a society built on conformity. After everyone is voted, the steward empties the container onto a table. If even a single piece of flattened bread is found, you have been blackballed. You are rejected. The reason for the single veto system was to ensure absolute harmony within the mess. It was believed that if even one man had a strong objection to you, it would poison the group's cohesion, which was essential for its function as a military unit. The suspense is agonizing. You have survived floggings, starvation, and the murderous solitude of the cryptia. You have endured every trial the state could throw at you. But your entire future, your status as a citizen, now rests on the silent judgment of these men and their pieces of bread. To be rejected at this stage is the ultimate disgrace. A man who failed to be elected to a mess became a social outcast, a hypomi, ayon, or inferior. He would be a man without status, without honor, barred from holding office and forever marked by his failure. Thankfully, you are accepted. The bread is all round, a wave of relief, an emotion you have not allowed yourself to feel in years, washes over you. You have a place. You belong. You are now a full citizen, the homo ios, one of the similar res, or peers. You take your seat at the long table. The meal is simple and regimented, a slight improvement on the fare of the Agoge, but still austere. The famous black broth is often on the menu. Each member is required to contribute a set amount of barley, wine, cheese, and figs from the produce of his kale arrows each month. Failure to make your contribution meant losing your citizenship. This was a clever mechanism to ensure that only those with productive land, worked by helots, could remain in the elite, effectively tying citizenship to land ownership. A little-known aspect of the mess hall was its role as a school for politics and social values. It was not just a place for eating. It was where news was shared, where strategy was debated, and where the older generation passed on the unwritten laws and traditions of Spartan society to the young. As a new member, you are expected to be mostly silent, to listen and to learn. The conversation is often laced with the same laconic wit you were taught as a boy, with older men easing and testing the younger ones to keep them sharp. This brings us to a historical debate about the very name for a Spartan citizen, homo ios. What did similar or peer truly mean the idealistic view, which the Spartans themselves promoted? Is that it represented a true equality. All Spartan citizens were peers, brothers in arms who had gone through the same training and shared the same values. They were a band of equals, living a communal life, free from the economic competition and social pretensions that plagued other Greek cities. However, many modern historians see this as a carefully constructed myth. They argue that behind the facade of similarity, Spartan society was rife with inequality. There were rich Spartans and poor Spartans. A man who owned a large, fertile kale arrows was far wealthier than one who owned a small, rocky plot. While they all ate the same simple food in the mess, their private homes and lifestyles could vary significantly. Powerful families certainly existed and wielded disproportionate influence. The similarity, this view argues, was not a reflection of economic reality, but a piece of ideological propaganda. It was a way to ensure the loyalty of the poorer citizens by making them feel like equals, thereby maintaining the solidarity of the ruling class in the face of the ever-present helot threat. It was a tool for papering over the cracks of inequality to preserve a united front. You sit at the table, eating your meager meal. You are surrounded by the men who are now your family. You listen to their clicked, serious conversation. This is the pinnacle of a Spartan man's life. You have a place in the phalanx and a seat at the mess. You have achieved the only form of success your society recognizes. But as you look at the hard, scarred faces around you, you realize that the similarity is real in one profound sense. You are all products of the same brutal forge. You are all survivors. You are all, in your own way, broken, and that is the true secret of your brotherhood. Sometime in your 20s, while you are still living full-time in the barracks with the other unmarried soldiers, another civic duty is required of you. You must get married. This is not a matter of romance, personal choice, or finding a companion. It is a state-mandated obligation, a crucial part of your service. Your primary duty as a soldier is to defend Sparta. Your primary duty as a citizen is to produce more soldiers. The process is as stringent and sentimental as everything else in your life. You do not court a girl. You might not even know your future wife's name. Marriages were often arranged by the bride's father or by the state itself. The primary considerations are eugenic and political. Is the girl from a strong, healthy family? Will the union forge a useful alliance between two households? Love is not a factor. In fact, it might even be viewed with suspicion, as a potential source of divided loyalty. The wedding ceremony itself is bizarre and secretive, more akin to a kidnapping than a celebration. The ritual, as described by Plutarch, is a strange piece of theater. On the wedding night, your bride's head is shaved. She is dressed in a man's cloak and sandals, and she is left alone in a darkened room, lying on a straw pallet. You, the groom, are expected to carry on your normal routine. You eat your evening meal at the SYS City with the other men. You do not speak of your impending marriage. After the meal, sober and composed, you slip away from the barracks under the cover of darkness. You go to the house where your bride is waiting, enter the dark room, and consummate the marriage. You do not stay the night. You spend only a short time with her before sneaking back to the barracks to sleep in your usual spot, as if nothing has happened. This clandestine routine continues for some time. You are a husband, but you live the life of a bachelor. You only visit your wife in secret, under the cover of night. The goal of this strange custom, according to the ancient sources, was to ensure that your passions remained high-end, that you did not become overly familiar or domesticated. It was also a test of your self-control and discipline. The ideal was to produce children without becoming emotionally attached to your wife or the comforts of a home life. Your primary commitment had to remain with the men of your mess hall. A lesser-known and fascinating aspect of the system is the practice of wife sharing. While not common, it was a recognized custom. An older, respected Spartan man who had already fulfilled his duty by producing healthy heirs might be persuaded to lend his wife to a younger, promising warrior who had not yet been able to produce a child of his own. The goal was purely eugenic, to ensure that the best warriors were passing on their superior qualities. The child born of such a union would be considered the legal heir of the older man, but everyone would know that its biological father was the better specimen. This practice, shocking to other Greeks, highlights just how completely the Spartan state prioritized the production of high-quality citizens over traditional notions of marriage, fidelity, and family. This entire approach to marriage and family life is the subject of a major historical debate. The traditional, pro-Spartan view, articulated by writers like Xenophon, saw this system as a mark of genius. It was a rational, pragmatic approach to human reproduction, designed to produce the best possible offspring and to prevent the emotional attachments of family life from undermining a soldier's military focus. It put the needs of the state entirely above the desires of the individual. However, a more critical modern perspective sees it as profoundly dysfunctional and inhumane. This view argues that the system created a society where genuine emotional intimacy was impossible. Men and women were essentially treated as breeding stock. The secretive nature of early marriage, the separation of spouses, and the lack of a shared domestic life would have prevented the formation of deep, loving bonds. It would have created a society of men who were more comfortable with their male comrades than with their own wives, and women who were emotionally isolated. This perspective asks what was the psychological cost of a system that so thoroughly devalued love, companionship, and the family unit. Did it create strong soldiers, or just lonely, emotionally stunted people? Eventually, after you have children and reach the age of 30, you are permitted to live at home with your wife and family. But even then, you are still required to take your main evening meal at the SYS sit-in. The state's claim on your time and loyalty never fully recedes. You look at this woman who is your wife. She is a stranger to you in many ways. You have not shared a life, only brief, stolen moments in the dark. She is strong, competent, and as indoctrinated in her duties as you are in yours. She manages your land, raises your children, and will one day send your sons off to the Agoge, just as your mother sent you. You feel a sense of respect for her, a shared understanding of your roles. But love, affection, these are foreign concepts. Your marriage is not a partnership of the heart. It is a contract with the state. Another duty fulfilled, another box checked on the path of a perfect Spartan life. You are now a man in your prime, a full citizen, a husband, a father, and a veteran. Everything you have endured: the starvation, the beatings, the cold, the fear, the killing has all been for this one purpose: to take your place in the phalanx. This is the culmination of your life's work. It is the reason you exist. On the day of a battle, the atmosphere in the camp is not one of frantic fear, but of calm, disciplined ritual. You meticulously comb and dress your long hair, a custom that baffled other Greeks. To them, long hair seemed effeminate, but for a Spartan, it was a symbol of his status as a free man and a warrior. You polish your bronze shield until it gleams, not just for protection, but as a matter of pride. You put on your iconic crimson cloak, the phalanx, not his armor, but so that the enemy will not see you bleed. Every action is deliberate, the part of a well-rehearsed ceremony. Before the battle, the king sacrifices a goat to the gods. The pipers begin to play the marching tune, the stark, steady rhythm you have known since you were a child. And then, you from up, you take your place in the line, a wall of men standing shoulder to shoulder. The man on your left is a member of your mess hall. You have eaten with him for years. The man on your right is another brother in arms. You know their strengths, their weaknesses. You trust them with your life. You hoist your shield, the heavy bronze asp is. It is your most important piece of equipment. It is large and concave, designed not just to protect you, but to protect the man to your left. Your unshielded right side is, in turn, protected by the shield of the man to your right. This is the simple, brutal genius of the phalanx. It is not a collection of individual warriors, it is a single, interlocking organism, a human fortress. To drop your shield is the greatest crime, because it doesn't just endanger you, it creates a gap that endangers the entire line. Your life is secondary to the integrity of the wall. You hold your long spear, the dory, overhand. The front ranks present a bristling hedge of iron spear points. The sheer psychological impact of this formation, a silent, glittering wall of bronze and iron advancing at a steady walk to the sound of pipes, was terrifying to its enemies. You have become a single, anonymous part in a great and terrible machine. All the training to erase your individuality, to make you think as a member of a herd, now makes perfect sense. In the phalanx, individuality is a liability, an act of personal, reckless heroism can be as dangerous as an act of cowardice if it breaks the formation. Your only job is to hold your position, to trust the men beside you, and to push forward. A little known but crucial element of hoplite warfare was the push, the odysmos. When two phalanxes met, it was not always a matter of elegant spear work. It often degenerated into a brutal, grinding, shoving match. You would brace your large shield against your shoulder and literally push with all your might against the shield of the man in front of you, while the ranks behind you pushed you from behind. It was a contest of mass, weight, and pure, collective will. The goal was to literally push the enemy phalanx off its feet, to break their line, at which point the real killing, could begin as the formation collapsed into a chaotic rout. Your years of physical hardship, your powerful physique, it was all for this moment, for the raw, brute force of the push. The effectiveness of this system is undeniable, but it also leads to a historical debate about Spartan military innovation. For centuries, the Spartan phalanx was the most feared land army in the Greek world. But were they truly great military thinkers? Or were they just masters of a single, rigid tactic? Critics argue that the Spartans were incredibly conservative. They perfected the hoplite phalanx and then stubbornly refused to adapt, even as the nature of warfare began to change. When faced with more flexible tactics like the light infantry skirmishers of the Athenian general Iphicrates or the brilliant, combined arms approach of Thebes under Epaminondas, the Spartan system proved brittle. Their defeat at the Battle of Leuctra 371 BCE, where the bands used a revolutionary, heavily weighted left flank to crush the Spartan right, was a stunning blow from which Spartan ever truly recovered. This view holds that the Spartans were not military geniuses, but one-trick ponies whose single trick was so effective that it took centuries for anyone to figure out how to beat it. The rigid training, the source of their strength, also became the source of their ultimate downfall. But you are not thinking of military history. You are locked in the moment. The enemy phalanx is approaching. The gap between you is closing. You can see the faces of the men opposite you. Their expressions a mixture of fear and aggression. The pipes are still playing. A calm, steady heartbeat in the midst of the rising tension. You are no longer an individual. You are not a husband, a father, or a son. You are the man on the right of one comrade, and the man on the left of another. You are a single, insignificant, and absolutely essential piece of the wall. The two lines are about to crash together. This is the moment you were born for. The battle is over. The field is a gruesome landscape of broken spears, discarded shields, and the silent, twisted shapes of the fallen. You are alive. Your body aches. Your muscles scream in protest. You have a fresh gash on your arm and a deep bruise on your shoulder where an enemy's shield smashed into you. But you are alive. You stood your ground. You did not retreat. You are holding your shield. You gather with the survivors of your mess, your brothers. There is no wild celebration, no whooping cries of victory. There is only a grim, quiet satisfaction. You take account of the fallen. You carry your dead and wounded from the field with a solemn reverence. You will bring them home on their shields, fulfilling the promise your mother made to you so many years ago. That night, back in the camp or in the barracks, you sit by a fire. The adrenaline has faded, leaving behind a profound, bone-deep weariness. You clean your equipment, tending to your shield and spear. The familiar, repetitive motions are comforting. In the flickering firelight, you catch your reflection in the polished bronze of your shield. The face that looks back at you is the face of a stranger you have come to know intimately. It is no longer the face of a boy, or even a young man. It is a mask of hardened leather, etched with the lines of hardship and violence. There are scars on your brow from training brawls, a thin white line on your lip where you bit it to keep from crying out under the whip. Your eyes, which once held the fear and confusion of a 7-year-old boy, are now calm, steady, and empty. They have seen too much. They have seen the brutal discipline of the Agoge, the darkness of the cryptia, the bloody chaos of the phalanx. You think back on the journey that brought you to this moment. You remember the cold shock of the wine bath on your first day of life. You remember your mother's stern face, her words about the shield. You remember the gnawing hunger, the freezing nights, the sting of the lash. You remember the face of the helot you killed in the dark, a memory that visits you sometimes in the quiet moments before sleep. You remember every step of the process that was designed to strip you down, to break you, and to rebuild you into this. A Spartan, a homo eoris, they appear. You have achieved everything your society demands of a man. You are a victor. You are a survivor. You are a pillar of the state. But as you stare into the distorted reflection, a question, formless and unwelcome, may rise from the depths of your conditioned mind. Was it worth it what was lost in the forging? What human part of you was sacrificed on the altar of Spartan glory? You have honor. But do you have joy? You have discipline. But do you have peace? You have a brotherhood of arms. But do you have love? This is the ultimate, unanswerable question of your existence. A question that the Spartan state has trained you your entire life not to ask. Your purpose is not to be happy, it is to be useful. Your value is not in your individual soul, it is in your function as a component of the phalanx. To even contemplate such questions is a form of treason against the system that created you. So you push the thought away. You banish it to the same dark corner where you keep the other unwanted memories. Day final. Poignant detail of Spartan life is that even in victory, the celebration was muted. The historian Plutarch notes that when the men returned from a victorious battle, their wives and mothers would show a quiet, proud demeanor. But if the battle was lost, and a man returned alive in disgrace, that is when the real emotion was shown: public wailing and grief, not for the dead, but for the shame of the survivors. This perfectly captures the inverted emotional landscape of Sparta. Glory was met with stoicism, but shame was met with profound, public displays of grief. Your emotional life, like everything else, was dictated by the needs of the state. The debate about your life, the life of a Spartan soldier, will echo for millennia. Were you the pinnacle of human discipline and courage, a model for all time, or were you a victim of the ancient world's most successful and brutal system of state-sanctioned child abuse? Were you a hero, or were you a monster, or were you, perhaps, both? History rarely offers simple answers. You were a product of your time and place, a man forged in a crucible of unimaginable intensity. You were a weapon, hung to a perfect, deadly edge. And a weapon does not ask why it was made. You put the shield down, the reflection disappears, the fire crackles, a small point of warmth in the vast, cold darkness. Tomorrow, there will be more training, and soon, there will be another battle. This is your life. It is the only life you know. You are a Spartan, and that is all you need to be. And so, the story of your life as a Spartan warrior comes to a close. The fire in the camp begins to die down, the embers glowing softly in the quiet of the night, the sharp edges of the day, the weight of the shield. The memory of the fight begin to soften, blurring into the peaceful landscape of your exhaustion. The world around you fades into a gentle hum, the distant murmur of the camp settling down for the night. The sound is comforting and steady as a slow, deep breath. You can feel the weight of your own body, a pleasant heaviness that pulls you down into the warmth of your bed. The cool sheets feel like a calm river, washing away the last remnants of the day. Your thoughts, once so sharp and focused on the story, now begin to drift, untethered. They float like single leaves on a slow-moving stream, carried along by the gentle current of oncoming sleep. You are no longer in Sparta. You are in that quiet, safe space between wakefulness and dreams. Each breath you take is a soft wave, pulling you further and further from the shore of consciousness, out into the deep, peaceful ocean of slumber. Let the story go. Let the day go. There is nothing left to do now but rest.